Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Eldest Daughter Saves the World. I am your host, Coach Laura Mickler, and I am excited to share today's topic with you. This is something that I feel like we don't talk about enough in our culture, in our everyday life, and it is this notion that there are some people, and we'll say friends that don't make it to this chapter of your life. And why is that okay? So, this sometimes pops up when we get a Facebook notification of someone as a suggested friend, or you connect on Facebook with somebody that you haven't for a long, long time. I've had that happen. And folks I went to school with, like, oh, I remember seeing this movie with you. I don't have any any uh any recollection of that. And it's not that I think they're a bad person, just life has happened. And so what we're going to focus on today is that, we might be a little nostalgic, but we're not going to be sad about what's happened with our friends. So I want you to think about this. And I think social media is also makes it so it's unrealistic for us to have friendships sometimes because yes, I'm connected to 1,000 people on Facebook and you know, do I, I've always had the rule, and this is just me personally, that I have to actually know you to be your friend on Facebook. Because that's just, I don't know. I don't know you. I don't want you seeing my stuff. And I've recently even pared that down a little bit more that if I see you in public, if I wouldn't say hello to you, I would not. We don't need to be Facebook friends, right? And that kind of helps. I don't know. It helps me kind of pare down the friend list a little bit here. But with that, we think that, because we can be connected to anybody, that friendships should last forever. And that if they don't, they're just a failure. And that's just something that's not true, right? That's just is not a it's not a realistic thing because friendships are going to naturally evolve. Yeah, we may feel guilty about it, but when we accept this, it's actually a pretty healthy situation. And my friend Cheyenne, that was on the podcast, I'll use us as an example. She is literally one of my best friends. We text every single day, but we actually lost touch for 6 or 7 years. And we were not very best friends before that. And I'm so sorry, my dog is causing trouble here. But we had this time and it's not that we weren't friends, we just lost touch, and that's okay. And sometimes you come back to those friendships and sometimes you don't. All right. So let's talk about friendships actually ending. And there are different ways that this can happen, right? So I think what most of us experience is the slow fade, right? You have these friends, and we're just using high school as an example. There's lots and lots of, of examples of this. But you were friends with these folks in high school. Maybe they went away for college. Maybe you went away for college. You didn't land in the same places. They had kids. You didn't. Just these life circumstances happen, right? And we just kind of lose touch with some people. And that's, again, okay, right? Another way that this can happen is the values divergence, right? So you grew in a different direction. And I see this a lot, I'll be honest. So I grew up in a very, very small town, and I see this that I moved up and on, and some people did not move up and on, and that's okay. We just grew in different directions. All right, our next style of friendship ending is the one-sided effort, right? And this is a stinky one because sometimes you get to a point where you realize you're always the one checking in, you're always the one making plans, and when you stop doing that, the friendship kind of fades, right? And so that, it just is what it is. And if you have been a part of this, I applaud you for taking some time to make it more even for yourself and more equitable, even though sometimes it hurts to kind of quote unquote lose that friend. All right. Then we have the season specific friend. So somebody that maybe you only worked for one chapter of your life, right? I have some friends that I was in my college sorority with, and they are lovely people. I just haven't really talked to them because they don't live where I live, and we don't really have much in common other than the sorority, right? So they were kind of a season specific friend. I think work friends sometimes fall into this when you leave a job and you're like, we're going to keep in touch forever. And it's just not realistic, right? It's just, again, life happens. And then this is the one that we all think is going to happen, but it only rarely happens, and that's the dramatic fallout, right? They do something outrageous. These are the ones they make movies about, like she was sleeping with my husband, or she screwed me out of a job, or whatever it is. We really remember these, but these are actually very rare in in real life. So, when we're ending these friendships, there's lots of reasons, lots of things. No one on either side is a bad person. It just happens. And so that guilt that we feel, I want you to take a little bit of that out of it because this is just a natural human thing, right? So let's talk about that guilt a little bit. Why do we feel guilty when these friendships end? Well, I think first, again, and I'm going to scapegoat it all I can, but social media, right? We can see what's going on with that person even if we've not actually talked to them, right? And we all have those friends that we can lose touch with and then pick right back up like nothing happened. And sometimes we need that in our lives. If you're in a season, maybe you have a newborn at home, or work is just overtaking your life, whatever it is, you have that time that you need to just keep your circle very small, and that's okay. But social media tells us everyone's available all the time, and why aren't you best friends with them? Right? When in reality, how you only have 7 lunches a week that you could do, right? And so you can't you can't get to everyone all the time. And I think we have this narrative in our culture that if you are real friends last forever. And that is not to say I have an amazing group of ride or die women in my life that are my dearest friends. Some of us have been friends for more than 30 years. And the older I get, the more I realize that's a rare thing. And so you have to take that out of your head that, "Oh, if they're not my friend, I've failed in some kind of way." And it's not that they're not your friend, you just have grown apart, right? And kind of along with that, the fear that letting go means there's something wrong with us. So, I should be able to maintain this friendship. And sometimes it's just not, it's not able to work out. If you have a friend that has a 4 hour time difference from you, it's probably going to be difficult to schedule phone dates. It's probably going to be difficult to see each other. Just those kinds of things. You have to let that guilt go about that. But there is kind of a thing with this, that, people will say, let me, blah, 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 blah. Mixed up on my words here. I know people in my life, and I won't name their names, but everyone is their best friend. Oh, that's my best friend. She just, and then 2 weeks later, she'll have a new best friend. And I think that we have to figure out the pattern there, right? Because there's a little bit of healthy evolution. I've moved, we had kids, I'm in a new job, whatever it is, we've just grown apart. That's a healthy evolution versus you're my best friend one day and now I'm mad at you. And now you're my best friend one day and now I'm mad at you. And like, you really have to look at that. That's when you need to say, okay, this is maybe not the healthy evolution. There's something either in the way that I'm choosing who I put myself around, or the way that I'm treating friends that they feel like they want to move on, right? So that's kind of, and I'm not going to give you a lot of advice on that because every friendship's a little bit different. So we have to kind of examine those patterns as they happen. And then let's give ourselves the permission to let go, right? Different seasons require different support systems. So I think the personal example I'll give of this, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, when we go to college and or our college age, I should say, right into our first parts of our careers, that kind of a thing. I kind of pulled back from my parents a little bit, right? It wasn't that they weren't there. It wasn't that we didn't talk. We didn't have a bad relationship. They just weren't my full-time person, right? And that became my friends and my now husband. And, some of those relationships that I was in, my brain was finally forming and I could flesh those out a little bit. But once we got into the season where we had children, I leaned back into our families, right? Because that was the support system I needed. I know how I grew up. I know that my parents were good parents. So that's how I wanted the support system, right? And same thing with my in laws. So I wanted to make sure that I had the right support systems there. And, yeah, I think you see this too if you are somebody that has chosen to be childless or is childless. It feels a little different when everybody around you is having babies and you're just like not interested. That's okay, but your support system may not be those new moms and you may not be the new mom support, right? That's just kind of how it is. And I think with this letting go too, we need to know that when we outgrow a friendship, that does not mean that it wasn't valuable, right? That person is still a worthy individual. You were friends with them for some reason, and it's okay to keep in touch on social media and just kind of see how they're doing. And it doesn't negate all the time that you spent together, right? There is a difference with this though in honoring what was. So we had this beautiful time and not forcing what isn't. I want this person to, you know, be with me at the retirement home when you haven't seen them in 30 years, right? We're not going to we're not going to force that. So, remembering people fondly and, acknowledging that right now you don't necessarily have a place for them. And again, this can kind of exist without that ongoing contact. You can think, "Oh my gosh, remember that one time that my friend did this super funny thing?" Or we took this awesome trip together in college and, I haven't talked to them in however long. And I think, somebody told me when I was getting married, and I'm so sorry if you're on the video, my dog is being crazy here. Um but somebody told me as I was getting married that there's a phenomenon that there's one or two of your bridesmaids you usually don't talk to after your wedding. And I'm actually really fortunate and that I'm still BFFs with most of mine, but the one I don't really talk to often is my cousin, right? And so, I can be very happy that she was in my wedding even though I don't talk to her all the time. So that can both can exist. It can be an and both, right? And I think bringing in gratitude, because you all know I love some gratitude, right? What did you learn from those folks? Maybe you learned what you don't want in a friend. Maybe you learned how you are, right? Or something about you. Maybe they taught you something about yourself. So it's okay to kind of be grateful for those experiences and what they did. And, holding space for both appreciation and acceptance. If you drifted apart because of a values difference or God forbid it's that rare one where things just blew up, right? You can still appreciate that person and accept what happened in your life, right? And then I think what we have to celebrate the most are the friends that we have in this chapter. And whether that be, friends who made it here or friends that you're forming in this chapter of your life. I am a huge proponent that people come in and out of your life as you need, right? And you never know when people are going to come back to you. And so, why are your ride or die people your ride or die people, right? Is it just necessity? Is it because they would literally drop everything for you? That's why my people are still around. Like I do not deserve the things that they give me, right? Because they're amazing. So having that gratitude without the guilt of like, oh, well, I have to do the same exact thing for them because you likely probably would do the same things for them. And that's just the reality of it. So that's what I wanted to share today as far as all of that goes. But I want you to give yourself permission that if your current circle is not your previous circle, you have not failed. It just means you're growing, you've changed, circumstances in your life have changed, whether activated that change or it just happened to you. So I want you to just think about, a friendship as we close today. I want you to think about a friendship that you had that you can remember fondly and appreciate, but you don't necessarily need to call up that person right this second and, get back insert yourself back into their life, right? So I want you to love the people you have. I want you to think about the people who have touched your life in some kind of way. And I hope you have a wonderful day. We'll see you next time.